Hey there, my name is Raj, and if you've come to this video randomly, just know that this video is a part of an entire playlist which has a much more structured approach towards OCD and recovery through natural methods. So make sure you check the entire playlist for better understanding. Cheers.
OCD can kiss my ass.
Alright, guys, we are now at the second stage of basic theory of OCD, and this is the first video of OCD and its complete dissection. So this is one of the most important things that I think that are required for the initial go, where a person doesn't understand what's happening to them. And if you come to this video for the first time, if you just randomly came across this video, I have this entire series that you must check out, so that it's not, the video just doesn't start randomly, because there are a lot more videos I've put up before that as a playlist. So a structured approach is there. So anyhow, I'm going to be starting with my understanding of OCD. As before I start everything, this is not to be taken as medical advice. I am not a doctor by profession, although I'm doing my degree in psychology at this point in time, but not yet. So I am talking about this with my entire experience of OCD, having suffered from OCD myself, from severe OCD, and how meditation and breath work I was able to overcome OCD. So this entire thing is there. All right, so let's dig in. And the basics of the basic stuff is, what the hell is OCD in the first place? You must have already gone through it, but for someone who has not. So OCD is a mental health disorder that affects people of all ages and walks of life, and occurs when a person gets caught in a cycle of obsessions and compulsions. I'll get to obsessions and compulsions in the next slide. Obsessions are unwanted or intrusive thoughts and images that trigger intensely distressing feelings. A thought pops up, it causes distress in a person, and that thought generally is fear-based. And the compulsion basically are behaviors that an individual engages in to attempt to get rid of these obsessions or decrease his or her distress levels. Now, these are generic, terms which is obviously available on the internet, but just to give you what the O, C, and D actually mean. And what a person does is basically why it becomes a disorder. Okay, so that the D here is actually very important. Sorry for the pun. The D here is actually very important, considering that everyone gets obsessive thoughts. A simple thing, I'll tell you a very simple obsessive compulsive thing. You see, when a person says, hey man, so how's life going? And the other person says, yeah man, life is going amazing, my business is going great. And immediately they say, oh, touch wood. It's a general thing. So in a simple kiddish term, it is like, a fearful thought came to the person's mind. Oh, the nice thing that I've said, I so hope that it doesn't, something wrong should not happen to, my good things that are happening right now. And so that obsession came, not an obsession, that fearful thought came. And then came the compulsion for the touching of the wood, and that basically was obsessive compulsive. But that does not mean it's a disorder. It becomes a disorder when somebody is like, every time he says something very nice, every time he has to do touch wood, and throughout the day he's doing touch wood, that becomes a disorder. So just to keep in mind, so this is where the entire difference between normal fearful thoughts and a basic compulsion that we do, and a difference between a disorder is. Okay, now let's come to the next thing. An example of OCD. This is a very typical OCD. A person touches a door handle, which triggers a fearful intrusive thought. General hand washing OCDs, which are pretty common. Though that's not the only OCD that a person has. The OCDs can be, I think, unlimited things, depends on the person's fears and their belief systems, or we'll get to that later. So I touch a door and says, oh my god, trigger came, oh, this doorknob must have had some germs, and if I'm fearful of germs or my health, obsession, so the obsession would pop up. It's like, oh, the door was covered in germs or was infected. Now the infection is on my hands. The infection can cause you or your loved one illness or even death. This thought pops up, and suddenly, you're in a distressful state, and you're not feeling all that great, and your body is in a fearful state of sensations at that point in time. And suddenly what you say, okay, fine, I can get rid of this state or this particular thought by simply washing my hands and cleaning them properly with the soap. Okay. But when it becomes a disorder, as I've spoken about in the previous slide, is that doing this ritual 20, 30 times a day, to an extent where the skin of the hands start getting bad, and the hands are not and the skin starts having an effect. This happens as the obsessive thought basically just doesn't come, and you are wrapped up with it, and it's done. You don't have to worry about it again. But it keeps happening. The obsessive thought keeps coming again and again and again and again and again, and you're not able to reason with it. That you wash your hands, it's done and over with. That thing doesn't happen there, and that's why it's a disorder. So this, since it becomes a loop, it keeps happening. That is the problem, and that is what OCD is all about. Now, this is just an example. The different kinds of OCDs, though we have given a set of names to OCDs, A, B, C, D, this is like this OCD, the cleanliness OCD, this is this OCD, but OCDs can be unlimited. Whatever fears that you have in mind can be triggered, okay, and OCD can just become something like with that obsessions that you have, or fears or core fears that you have. Okay. Now, coming to the vicious loop of OCD. Again, as I've explained this, so a trigger. Triggers are basically the things that pop up those obsessions. Okay. Let's just say somebody who has some kind of existential OCD. Example, if you see a magical movie or a space show or something like that, that's going to trigger something else. If you have XYZ OCD, whatever the triggers are that will remind you of their obsession, okay, those things are called triggers. We're not going to be working too much about the triggers, because the triggers can be unlimited. Avoiding the triggers is not going to do the job anyways, because how many things are you going to keep avoiding in your life, and that's not a great way to actually go about resolving OCD in the first place. So don't worry about triggers, and because many people, we start avoiding triggers. We're like, okay, because this thing scares me, I'm not going to see it. I hope it doesn't pop in my head. I can't watch TV series or something like that. I don't want to be triggered. Okay. But that's something that we can't avoid, to be really, really honest with you. And that is not the solution to the problem in any ways, because we've got to live our lives. We have to do the things we love. And the true freedom here is not to be even bothered about triggers when you actually make your progress. So a trigger comes, obsessive, fearful, intrusive thoughts come after that trigger. These thoughts basically get you anxious. You get a little scared, and then you do compulsion. Once you do the compulsion, you get a temporary relief. Now, the word here is temporary relief. That's a very important thing. It's not a permanent kind of thing that, it's done. It's a very short-lived kind of temporary relief once you do it. And then again, once the relief is done, you feel a little relaxed. That's why you do the compulsions, because you feel relaxation after you do the compulsion. And once it's done, the cycle starts again, because, again you get a trigger, again you can. So this is where a person's totally stuck into this loop. So this is the entire dissection of an OCD. Now, if this entire cycle is there, there's a core to this particular cycle. I haven't mentioned it here, but maybe in the coming slides, I think the root of OCD, if I'm not going to be talking about it in the other. Okay, I'm going to talk about this one only. So let's just understand that this cycle continues, but what's fueling this entire cycle? What's the thing? Why does this obsessive thing come again and again and again? And why am I not able to reason with it? Okay. So first and foremost, I'm going to be talking about some common OCD themes like this example. And then I'm going to go to what is fueling this entire cycle. Common OCD themes are generally checking, contamination OCDs. If I'm scared of mental illnesses, blah, 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 many, many things. Whatever the core fear of a person is, which is there, can pop up. Hoarding, existential, spiritual, magical, intrusive thoughts, symmetry and order, avoidance of the triggers, avoidance, reassurance. A lot of people have a lot, Is this okay? That kind of OCD is there because you're scared that what your actions that you're doing is incorrect. Ritual OCDs that you have got to put some things in this thing, or you'll count this numbers. Okay, I want to count these poles or trees. Blah blah blah. A lot of people have different things. HOCD is there, POCD is there, religious OCD is there, relationship OCD is there, and then we have abstract. Abstract OCD is basically, it can be anything. Anything. Sometimes you don't even know because you haven't even read about it, and these kind of things become an obsession. So these are just the basic ones. So if you don't even have any one of them, if you have a different kind of OCD, just remember that OCDs can be made up with anything. But the core thing in all these OCDs, in every possible OCD, 99.9% of the time, is fear. Okay, fear. I'm going to come to this particular slide. Every OCD that a person has, the core thing in it, regardless of the subject, regardless of the theme, the core thing in it is fear. The entire loop we were just talking about earlier, this particular loop, okay, the entire loop of any OCD is fueled by fear. Without fear, the obsessions lose their intensity. Now, there's so many thoughts we get in the day. If they are not fearful, they don't have any impact on us. They come and they just go. However, in the OCD loop, the fear holds a very, very strong part. That is the core of it. If there's no fear, there's simply a thought and we move, it doesn't even bother. So that's the main thing. Whatever OCD you have, just sit and think about it, or write it down somewhere. That, all right, I had this OCD. What's my fear? Write it down and you'll come to an understanding that what I'm talking about. Sufferers get confused with multiple OCD types. Okay, even if they overcome an OCD, another OCD takes its place as the root is not resolved. So this happened to me. And so what happens is that, you tell your mind, all right, and this happens in some of the cases, maybe it doesn't happen to everybody. But in some of the cases, what will happen is that you will overcome a particular fear and say, okay, fine, well, what the hell was I talking about? This, what I was doing was nonsense, and you overcome that fear. Then what happens is that another obsession takes over. And once you spend time on it, 2-3 months on it, then another comes up. And then by the time you're done with the fifth one, the first one will pop up again. Okay? Then you're just really busy in resolving them. How much time are we going to go there? We have to look towards the root, and the root of that is fear. If we diffuse the fear, then everything vanishes in the circle. Okay? Then the trigger is basically when we diffuse the fear, this cycle actually gets cut. It's no longer there. Or when the fear is lesser, then of course the obsession is not going to be that strong. When the obsession is not going to be that strong, you're not going to get anxious. And when you're not going to get anxious, the compulsion is not required. So it breaks this continuous loop. And that's what we're going to be learning, and that's what the practices are going to be about, working on this particular root. Because this fear has a strong impact on you, whatever the fear that you have. And all OCDs, okay, are almost always unreal fears. Okay, the fear in reality does not exist, and that is why one is unable to intelligently resolve it. Now think about it. I want to talk a little about a fear in this particular thing. Fears are not a problem. Generally human beings are wired for fears. When we were in the jungles and everything like that, we always had to be a little vigilant. What if we get attacked? Now imagine if you're walking in the jungle. You're walking in the jungle, your obviously body is in a flight or fight response. You're hyperactive, you're vigilant. Okay, your mind is active and looking for, what's the word? You're looking for any movement, or anything. You're very hypersensitive to anything. Okay, and that's what's basically happening in OCD, by the way. It's just that, when we are in the jungle, we are supposed to be hyper vigilant at that point in time, because we got to check for threats. I hope there's no goddamn tiger there. I hope there's no snake on the path that I'm trekking on, and so on and so forth. That time, those are real fears. That's required. Okay, but in OCD, almost the fears are unreal. Unreal fears are, you're sitting in your room and you're hypersensitive towards a tiger attacking you. That's an unreal fear. So there's a difference between real fears and unreal fears. And OCD is primarily all about unreal fears and those what ifs that can happen. Those are the kind of fears that basically are there. Now, a real fear would get over as soon as you cross the jungle and you're in the city. That fear would calm down, and that's the end of that. But here, since the fears are unreal, they're always with you. You're not able to, they don't get subsided automatically. And these are the core differences between learning why fear and real fears and unreal fears. The difference has to be very clear to you. And if you just check yourself and understand what your fears are, you'll come to an understanding that they're unreal fears. Now, the body here can't differentiate between real fears and unreal fears and respond the same way. This results in emotional distress, panic, and anxiety. Okay? The anxiety disorders, the panic attacks, and everything are all coming because of fears. Panic and anxiety does not exist if there is no fear. It's as simple as that. So, our mind is not able to differentiate. It's always in the hyper mode. It's always checking, what if this will happen, that will happen. So it's not differentiating. So the effect of that panic and that fear in the body is continuous, is not calming down, and is responding to it in the same way. When you have fear, your palms are going to get sweaty. You're going to feel that tingling thing in your stomach and in your lower region of the body, because that area really gets affected in terms of fear. Your heartbeat's going to increase, your stress levels are going to go high, and that is a normal body mechanism to react to fear, general fear. But even an unreal fear is going to react in the same particular way. The fight or flight response is going to be the same. And this is what I wanted to say in this particular video, and this is to explain to you the entire OCD cycle, what it is, what's happening inside of you, and what is the root of it. Now, if we resolve the root of it, okay, we resolve the entire cycle. And it's as simple as that. If you remember in the previous video when I mentioned that we guys are stuck in that map of consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins, I mentioned that we are stuck in fear, and which is the core of all OCDs. You work on the root, the tree automatically resolves. Because what we're doing is that, imagine OCD as a tree. It has different branches. There is no point cutting all the branches. You cut one branch, the other one's there. You cut the other one, the previous one is going to get up. Okay? It's a never-ending cycle. If you need to destroy the entire tree of OCD, you get to the root, destroy it from the root, and the entire tree, no branches grow, no fruits grow. Otherwise, here, every time we do a compulsion, we're just picking one, a little branch here and there, a little leaf here and there. That's not going to cut it. We can continue to do that for the rest of our lives. It's not going to end. The only thing that is going to remove this tree is destroying its root, which is fear, and especially the unreal fears. Okay, and now in the next videos, I'm going to be talking about, what's the next video coming? Let me just check. Symptoms of OCD. Okay, so that's what I'm going to talk about, and I'll see you in the next video.